All right, thank you all. So thanks for spending your Saturday morning with us. My name is Brad Waldschmidt. I'm part of the team that works on the Nashville traffic calming program, and I'll let Laura introduce herself.
Hey everyone, I'm Laura Kelly. I'm also on the Nashville traffic calming team.
Excellent. So what we'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about what traffic calming is, why we're here talking about Jones Avenue and Edwin Street, talk about some options, some possibilities to sort of manage vehicle speeds a little better on these two streets, kind of go through what the next steps will be uh, in the future. And we're also going to show you a concept design. We've put something on virtual paper. It doesn't have to be the final answer, but we've put something just to kind of show you all, to kind of give you an idea of what a traffic calming design or project could look like. And then we think it'll take about maybe 10 or 15 minutes to kind of go through our spiel. And then we'd love to open it up to questions either on the call, or if you want to type it in the chat box, that's absolutely fine. I do want to say, I think Councilmember Parker is on the call. I just wanted to recognize you, Councilmember Parker, and ask if there's anything you'd like to say on the front end. And if he's just calling in, I didn't want to put him on the spot, but I like to give council members the opportunity if they want.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate it. No, I just wanted to say hello and thank everybody for being here on this Saturday morning. I'll be listening in, following along. This is my 8th or 9th traffic calming thing. So a lot of this initial meeting stuff is going to be familiar to me. But once we get into the discussion phase, I'll definitely be listening. And y'all just feel free to reach out to me throughout the process if I can help with anything.
Sounds great. Thank you, Councilmember Parker. I'm going to share my screen, and Laura will kick us off. Laura, I'll go ahead and ask, are you able to see the presentation title?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So take it away, Laura.
Cool. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We like to start off the meetings with this slide to go over really high level what traffic calming is. So these 3 bullet points summarize it well. The first is education. So this meeting is a bit of an example of that, but it's educating neighborhood residents what traffic calming is, and also learning the issues that reside on that particular neighborhood or in that particular street. The next is enforcement, which unfortunately we don't have a ton of control over as NDOT, just controlling speeds through writing tickets or monitoring through by the police. The last, which we'll be focusing on throughout this meeting, is engineering. So finding engineering solutions to help slow speeds and provide traffic calming solutions. Traffic calming is highlighted on residential streets in neighborhoods. It is physical solutions that reduce speeds, not only at the location of whatever is installed, but throughout the street over significant lengths. But it really is focused on residential neighborhoods, and the neighborhood street traffic calming program in Nashville specifically is a street program, not a neighborhood program. So it's implementing devices that reduce speeds and increase safety throughout the length of the street. As part of this program, we do have limited resources and really high demand as Davidson County, Nashville is growing so quickly. So we want to really focus on streets that need it and address the issues as they arise. So this is a really important slide that we want to emphasize. There's a lot of other issues that people have that don't necessarily fall under the neighborhood street traffic calming program, but can be found solutions to really easily. So the first is Hub Nashville. This is a great first stop for any Metro or Nashville NDOT issues. So there's a phone number you can call, an online resource. We have the link here, or there's the app. So this is the easiest way to make requests if there's an issue at a stop sign, or something has fallen down, or you can't see when you're turning out of your street because of a huge bush, something like that. This is where you would go for that, in addition to the more common sign requests, signalization requests. The next is the walk and bike program. So if there's an interest in sidewalks or bike lanes, bike facilities, we have the walking and biking managers contact on here that you can reach out to for those requests. And then lastly, the Beautification Commission. the contact is on here as well for him, and that's the Adopt a Street program. If you're interested in community service groups for cleaning up neighborhoods, this is the resource for that. So mentioned previously with the growth in Nashville, there is a lot of demand for traffic calming throughout Davidson County. To put a number to that, as of this winter, there were 426 neighborhood streets that were applied for, and 24 were selected in this round. The way that they were selected is through this prioritization system. So 100 points is the total for each street. And the pie chart summarizes it well, but we'll start with the measured speeds, which is the largest percentage and what contributes the most to if a street gets selected. So we compare the 85th percentile speed. So if you've noticed recently, there may have been the tubes that you drove over, and those are meant to measure speeds on Jones and Edwin in this case. And we compare that speed to the posted speed. And the larger the difference is there, the higher that would rank. The next is crash history. So we look at 5 years of crash history on each street that was applied for. And then the next two are kind of tied together. Active transportation is anything that either encourages or forces pedestrians into the street. So a lack of sidewalks would fall into that category. And then the last is neighborhood destination. So if there is a church, school, or synagogue nearby that provides something that people want to walk to, that also goes into this prioritization process. So that was the background on how we select streets, and now we're going to move into the 2 streets that were selected in your neighborhood. So the first is Jones Avenue, and this is between Douglas Avenue to Trinity Lane. And the next one is Edwin Street between Meridian Street and Trinity Lane. So these photos are from a site visit and that we went on to capture photos and understand existing conditions on these 2 streets.
Thanks, Laura. Just want to remind everybody we're about halfway through. If you have any questions about kind of what we're talking about, if you want to voice them, if you can just save them toward the end, we'll definitely leave room for that. Or if you just want to type them in the chat box in WebEx at any time, that works just as well. So we want to kind of highlight the map here. So Jones Avenue is shown in red. We're looking at Douglas Avenue to East Trinity Lane. Then we're looking at Edwin Street from Meridian all the way through that kind of sharp 90-degree curve on the east up to East Trinity Lane. So the red and blue lines are what we're here talking about today. We've also highlighted several smaller green lines. We just want to make sure that the participants on this call here are aware of other traffic calming projects that are going on in close proximity. If there's a green line shown on this map, there is some sort of traffic calming design happening. I'll start with kind of on the southeast, Rosedale and Montgomery. That traffic calming will be installed. I believe there's some waiting on the contractor currently to get those installed. Rosedale and Montgomery will be having traffic calming installed. Then the other streets, Meridian Street, Lishi, and Douglas, are nearing the final design is nearly complete, at which point those property owners will get to vote on whether they want it or not. And you will get to that process here with you all in a little bit later on the call. And then there's also Chickasaw Avenue. That design's been finalized, and I'd have to go back and check. That is either about to go to vote or is currently in the voting process for property owners along Chickasaw. So the fact that there are other traffic calming projects near Jones and Edwin doesn't necessarily have any impact on what we design or whether it happens or not. I just want to make sure everyone understands that there are some other streets close to these 2 streets that are in the traffic calming program at various stages. So we kind of want to shift and talk about what are some options, what are some ways that we can manage vehicle speeds a little better. The first option, I'll say one of the more common options, are these speed cushions. They're black rubberized materials. I think at the highest point above the asphalt, it's about 3 inches at the highest point. So it's sort of like a ramp up and then a ramp down. These speed cushions are something all vehicles travel over. And the thought is that typically the comfortable speed is around 15 to 20 miles per hour. Now, comfort's relative. So some people may think they need to go a little slower to feel comfortable. Some people may be higher, but the thought is trying to keep the vehicle speeds around 15 or 20 as they go over these speed cushions. So this is one example of a way in which cars, it is an effective way to manage vehicle speeds along streets. Another option here is speed tables. Now, right out of the gate, you can see this goes across the entire road without the gaps. You can also see it maybe from the right photo. It's a little longer. The comfortable speed might be more like 20 to 25 miles per hour, a little higher, but still at or below the posted speed limit. This is an option on some streets. I will say at NDOT, we typically like to go more for the speed cushions. And the reason why is, again, tables, every vehicle is going over a table. That includes emergency vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances. So while people are slowing down a little bit to go over these, that includes someone who's responding like an emergency responder. I'm going to go back one slide now. One of the benefits of the speed cushions is you see there's some gaps on the outside and between each of these black rubberized devices. Those gaps are designed to lessen the impact to the emergency vehicles like fire trucks, like ambulances. Typically, the front wheels can actually straddle these speed cushions. The back wheels usually have additional wheels because of the weight, so they may hit I'll call it the side ramp ups, kind of on the left and right edges. It'll still be less than a full ramp like our passenger vehicles would take, but it is less of an impact to emergency vehicles when you compare it to speed tables. So just one thing we wanted to call out, but those are the cushions and the tables. A few other options. One are radar feedback signs. You see on the left there, it's a speed limit sign with the radar, and it lets people know how fast they're going. And if they're exceeding the speed limit, oftentimes it'll kind of flash. The intent is to help people be aware if they're speeding. Now, granted, some people may just want to speed, and that's very unfortunate. But I will say there are some drivers and motorists out there, and occasionally I have been one of them, who doesn't realize that I'm speeding. Perhaps I'm thinking about something else, and something like this can draw my attention back to where it should be, which is the speed limit, the road, and I can reduce my speed to stay within that posted speed limit. We have seen examples in Nashville too where this has been an effective traffic calming measure on some streets. A few other options are narrowing. I like to focus on that left photo. There are some streets that have a lot of pavement, and sometimes adding some white lines on the edges to narrow where the cars are supposed to drive, that can actually have a helpful impact on speeding. Being out on Jones and Edwin, we can take a look at that, but I'm not sure that those streets are, I'll call it extra wide. So we can certainly consider that on Edwin and Jones, but from our site visit, and we'll be doing another one later this month, I don't recall the streets being too wide where something like this might help. All the same, it is something that we can look at, and it's in the toolbox of the traffic calming measures. Now, neighborhood traffic circles, these are like the roundabouts that I'm sure several of you have driven through, but these are much, much smaller. And something very important to know here is that we typically look for intersections where these can be placed, but large vehicles like school buses, fire trucks can still turn around them and not get stuck or damage something. So occasionally we're able to find a good spot for circles, but a lot of times there's not enough room. So that's something we could look at a few intersections along Jones or Edwin, but the traffic calming program does not widen pavement. The traffic calming program does not take right of way or people's property. It's really taking the streets and what's the best that we can do with what's out there today. So we're definitely willing to hear that feedback, and we can look at it if there's a desire. But a lot of times we've found traffic circles are kind of challenging on some streets that are a little narrower. And the last example we want to cover here are the chicanes. The left example shows it with pavement markings, where cars, you kind of have to turn your steering wheel left and right instead of just having a straight road. I feel like both Jones and Edwin kind of fall into that category, especially Jones Avenue, just kind of really being a straight road. But again, if Jones isn't extra wide, there may not be room to really do any sort of chicanes without widening. And again, we're not in the widening program, it's the traffic calming program. So those are just some additional examples. Now I want to touch on this here. We are at the first meeting. We're going to show you a concept design here in a few minutes, and then we're going to hear your feedback. And after this meeting, we're, let's just pause right there. Actually, I want to pause. I want to show you all the concept design. We will come right back to the slide and then kind of talk about what the next steps are, and then open up the great Q&A and great discussion. So I'm gonna see if I can manage WebEx well here, and I'm just going to show what a concept design could possibly look like. And Laura, I'm going to rely on you again. Are you able to see a Jones Avenue concept here?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to assume everybody can. And so this is Jones Avenue just today. Now, I apologize, the way Jones Avenue is, the north arrow, you'll see in the bottom corner, it's pointing to the right. So if you normally look at a map, usually north is up. We had to rotate Jones to get it to fit. So just keep that in mind, that Douglas is on the left, East Trinity is on the right. So this is Jones Avenue today. And one of the design concepts that we've come up with are the speed cushions. This is black rubberized materials that do have the gaps in between them. And so this is just an example of what a design could look like along Jones Avenue. Now you'll see 8 speed cushions, and I will tell you all, they look really, really close together when you are zoomed this far out on a map. But what I want to make sure people understand is we typically design these to be 400 to 500 feet apart. And so even though it's kind of difficult to tell on this graphic with how far zoomed out we are, typically these will be around 500 feet spacing. Any closer, and it really starts feeling like a mall parking lot or a grocery parking lot, and that's not what we're trying to do, where you're going over all the. But we also don't want to place them too far apart, or the motorists that really want to speed have a better chance of picking up speed between them. So, so just keep in note. I know there's not a scale on here, but these would roughly be around 500 feet apart, and after this meeting, our next step would be go to a final design. We'll do another site visit, and we're going to make sure that where we're proposing to design these, we don't put them right in front of people's driveways. We try to keep them 20 to 30 feet away from people's driveways so they're not turning left and right over them as they enter their home every day. And then we also try to make sure that they're not on steep hills or anything of that kind. So we can come back to this. I just want to kind of show what Jones Avenue could look like. There's 8 speed cushion locations shown between Douglas and Trinity. Maybe the final design would end up being 7, or maybe all 8 locations. That's just sort of an example of what it could look like. Now next, I want to go to Edwin Street. So now north is up. We're looking at north the way we're all normally used to on maps. Here's Edwin Street. And we feel like initially we might be looking at something like 6 speed cushions, or 2 on each block, 2 between Meridian and Lichy, 2 between Lichy and Jones, and then 2 between Jones and that sharp 90-degree curve near where the development's occurring. Now Edwin does have a little more of hills and grades. There can be hills that are too steep for these to be bolted down and installed. That's another thing. After this meeting, we would go out and confirm that all the hills are satisfactory for kind of what we're showing here. But this could be an example of what perhaps a traffic calming design could look like on Edwin Street. And one more slide, and then we will open it up to all the feedback. We can come back to any of these. If you could just bear with me here, I want to switch back to that PowerPoint. Let's see here. All right. So we're coming back to this last slide. So we showed that concept design. We'll come back to it in a few minutes. After we end this meeting and after we get your feedback about the concept design, we'll then go and do another site visit, prepare a final design. The final design is going to be a lot more detailed. Those concepts, that's as detailed as we have right now. At the second meeting, once a final design is prepared, it's going to be a lot more zoomed in, and it's going to be a lot more detailed. We're going to be able to show exactly where each speed cushion location would be going. whose address, whose driveway it's near. If you say what street address you're at, those are labeled at near where the speed cushions are. It's going to be very, very detailed so people can really understand what the design is proposing. And then after that second meeting, if everything's good, then it goes to an online ballot. That's one of the unique things about the Nashville Traffic Calming Program. NDOT, we are preparing this design, but it's ultimately the property owners along each of these streets that get to vote on whether it happens or not. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So there's a new ballot process. And after that second meeting, once a final design is finalized, there will be another mailer similar to the one that hopefully you all got for this meeting right here. That's going to actually be a voting card with a unique ID code. And every property owner along Jones Avenue and every property owner along Edwin Street will have the ability to vote. Yes, we want this traffic calming, or no, we do not want this traffic calming. And those will be sent out via mail, and it'll be 6 weeks of voting. And every property owner along the streets get one vote. And at the end of the 6 weeks, NDOT will tally up the votes. And if if 2/3 or more of property owners that respond vote that they want the traffic calming, it's going to happen. And NDOT will order the materials, get the contractor lined up, and get them installed. If it's less than 2/3, then the proposed design will not happen, and we'll get back with the council member in the neighborhood on whether something to a lesser extent gets installed instead. Now, this voting process, Jones Avenue and Edwin Street are treated completely separately. So it's truly the Jones Avenue vote and then kind of separate the Edwin Street vote. So it's possible that both votes could be successful, or both streets could be successful during the vote, or one may succeed and one may fail. They're not tied together. It will be two separate votes. If you happen to live on the corner of Jones and Edwin, the eligible votes are property owners that are adjacent to a street. Doesn't matter where your mailbox or your driveway or your address is. If you have a front yard, side yard, backyard that is adjacent to any of these streets, then you get to vote on that street. So that means if you do live on the corner of Jones and Edwin, I'm not sure who you are if you're on this call, you will actually get to vote for each one. You'll get one vote for Jones and you'll get one vote for Edwin. And so we can come back to this more, but that concludes sort of the information that we wanted to sort of just present to the neighborhood about Jones and Edwin. And we'd love to just open it up. I'm going to stop sharing here, but we can absolutely share anything back. Want to open it up to questions or comments? You can either come off mute or you can chat it in the chat box.
Brad, this is Matt Fuquay. Thank you. This is exciting. I guess my question is, from your experience, have there been any proposed projects that have been voted down by the community?
Yes, there have been. It's a smaller percentage. Most streets that go to the voting is successful, but there have been a few streets in Nashville where for whatever reason the property owners along that street decided they did not want the traffic calming. You know, some people did, some people didn't. And this voting process is set up really to just make sure that two people don't have an impact on 100 people on a street. So there have been some instances, but the vast majority of the votes have been successful recently.
That's good. I'm hoping that we've got a really good neighborhood association. I'm hoping everybody can come together and get enough votes to where this will be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think, hey, Brad and Laura, thank you so much for doing this. I'm Elizabeth M.K. Sullivan, sorry. And my husband, Brian, is that bald guy over there. And we live near, yeah, so sorry, dear. We live near that 90-degree turn at the far end of Edwin Street. And I think your plan is really excellent. I have a couple of quick questions about it. In terms of the options, is this the most affordable and the most efficient option?
I believe the speed cushions are the most efficient and effective traffic calming measure that can be proposed along Jones or Edwin. There's a reason why Nashville usually prefers them, and that's one of the reasons. It's really, I mean, Laura mentioned over 400 streets that have applied, and only 24 got selected. We're trying to make the most of the council members' budgetary, to NDOT for the traffic calming program and do the most with what's there. So speed cushions are sort of that combination, I would say, yes.
Okay, and I think that's important given our budgetary constraints in the whole city. The other question I have is, I know the cushions are the ones that are a little bit more helpful to the emergency vehicles and buses and things like that. In your experience, do you find that people just sort of figure out a way to, get through there, or is that not an issue?
That's a very good question. I'm going to answer that by going back to the PowerPoint because I like to have visuals. So,
Sure.
Elizabeth, are you able to see the speed cushion photos?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. All right. I just like to make sure my technology is working. So, that is something Elizabeth brings up a good point. We try to design these speed cushions such that cars that still want to speed can't just go around them and avoid them. So you'll see those gaps on each of these photos, whether it's the gap between the cushions or the gap on the edges. Those are things we take a lot of look at, and that'll be kind of drawn out and presented at the second meeting when we have a final design. We try to make sure that those gaps aren't too large, whereas to invite the people that unfortunately might still want to speed from going around. And so that's something we take a lot of look at where we do hear that feedback after installation, and that'll go out and try to do something like add some of those flexible white posts or something to sort of prevent that. And that's one of the reasons why you see the picture on the right has 2 cushions, and the photo on the left has 3 cushions. Well, 3 cushions is that's more expensive. There's a reason we did that. It's because that street's a little wider, and so we do look at not only the how wide the street is for the spacing, but the number of cushions. From my recollection on the field visit, I feel like Jones and Edwin are both relatively average width to maybe on the narrower side. Where I feel like the photo on the right is going to be a little more representative, and I feel like those gaps between them shouldn't be too wide. But that's absolutely something, the engineering that we look at is, okay, is what we're about to design going to invite someone to want to try to circumvent, and we want to see what can we do to prevent that.
Cool. I have a bunch of questions, so if you guys want to jump in, just, feel free to do so.
If I could, I'd like to ask a follow-up on that. This is Brian. How do the axle widths of emergency vehicles compare to most consumer vehicles? Because if an emergency vehicle can straddle these things, if someone wants to drag race, why would it be difficult for them to just aim their? I mean, we have a lot of people that'll come around that bend on Edwin and use the downhill slope as an opportunity to really get up a whole lot of speed. And why couldn't they just aim their car such that they straddle it just like an emergency vehicle would?
Right. So I'm just going to bring up this just so we're looking at it together. So the vendor who sells these speed cushions, one of their marketing campaigns is that the reason cushions work are emergency vehicle axle widths are longer, the wheelbase widths are wider for emergency vehicles compared to passenger vehicles. So an emergency vehicle can truly straddle one of those cushions, but in a passenger vehicle, the best they're going to be able to do is have either go over it or have one wheel track avoid it, but the other wheel track will still have to go over it. So it's really a matter of does the driver want to feel it or make their passenger feel it. And we will say we've also done our own investigations to kind of confirm that. We've measured, I'll just say we measured my car, and we measured a Ford Raptor, and we measured a few other vehicles. And the best thing any of them really could do is either hit it or do the one to the side. And we visited a fire station near our office, and we measured it and confirmed Yeah, I mean, the marketing is correct. The front wheels of an emergency vehicle are wide enough to straddle these. The back wheels, because they usually have the dual tires on each side, they will get on the ramp ups of each cushion, but it's still less of an impact compared to what a full, I guess, over it would it be like.
Okay, thank you.
So, my other question is, I like the statistical sort of analysis that you guys do. Obviously, that's really smart. You got to have some benchmarks for where you're going to do these projects. Have you analyzed statistics sort of after the fact to see that there is an improvement? I mean, I'm curious about that.
So I have a mixed bag of answers for you. So, so in the industry across the country, there have been studies, and yes, if speed cushions are installed and they're installed at appropriate spacing, it can have a positive effect to really reduce those speeds. Again, if speed cushions got installed, but there's really long distances between them, that data may not really show much benefit. But that's why we really looked at that 400 to 500 foot spacing. Now, historically, Nashville has not been doing as many before and after studies. There's also been fewer traffic calming projects. So there's been fewer streets with cushions. Recently, the Metro Council has been putting a lot more budget into the traffic calming program for NDOT to do. So we're starting to see many more streets, including just that one graphic I showed earlier, just in close proximity to where we're at here, where there are or are going to be more speed cushions in the very near future. And NDOT's really putting forth an effort to collect that after data for the speeds to compare the before and after. I will say Nashville has done that with some radar feedback signs, and even those show a benefit. Now, not as much of a benefit as speed cushions, but there has been a benefit. So I don't have as much local data to provide to you. The one or two spots I'm aware of, it's been beneficial, and in the industry in general, these are certainly helpful. But it's all about designing it right. We
Sure.
look at where those stop signs are, and we have to assume people are going to come to a complete stop, which is another issue in Nashville. But we look at stop signs, and then we look at that spacing for how we've come up with this concept design to try to really help reduce those vehicle speeds.
I mean, that's good enough for me. I just kind of wanted to see, obviously we want things to be effective when, I mean, duh. So I think that sounds good. And it sounds like anecdotally, just from your experience, you're starting to see real improvement. And yeah, I'm sure in good time we'll have more stats and all that, but that's really good to hear. And I appreciate that.
Hey,
I'll also just say, like, I am not a fan at all of traffic circles. I think those are just sort of trendy. I don't see, and I think they're a pain. So I'm glad they're not presented in the plan. And then I have another question. And again, you guys interrupt if I'm hogging all the time. But we have an interesting combination of landowners along Edwin right now because you've got this huge complex at the top of the hill. You've got our community, which has multiple homes. And then they're getting ready to do a phase 2 to our community so that you'll have like 40 houses where 3 or 4 used to be, but only some of those will front Edwin. And when you're getting ready to do this vote, there's a huge section of Edwin that's just owned by a developer right now. They haven't done the project yet. How does their vote impact the total?
Yes, very good question. This has been a lot of focus at NDOT on this new voting program and trying to address some of the scenarios that you're describing. So let me do my best to answer that. So when the vote occurs, it is going eligible voters are residential property owners. I'm just going to focus on Edwin Street, but everything I'm saying applies to Jones Avenue also, but I'm just going to use Edwin Street for the purpose of this answer. So residential property owners along Edwin Street are going to be eligible. So the first question we look at is it residential? Is the land use residential? So like the owner of Tom Joy Park, the city, not going to vote. If there was a church, that church is not going to have a vote. It's the residential property owners. The second thing I want to make sure we unpack is it is the owners. And so if there's a renter, even a renter who's a very much a part of the neighborhood and community, but their landlord owns it and lives in Kentucky. The mailers and votes are going to Kentucky. It's going to the property owner. That's another thing we like to unpack. The third thing is it a residential piece of property on which there's actually an active residential dwelling unit? So if there is a home at the time that the ballots go out, if there's a home that has been just started construction, so there's no one living there, it's not an active residential, that property owner is not getting a vote for that property. And so that's another recent NDOT clarification on the policy. And the fourth thing is, if there is any property owner along Edwin Street, whether it's a developer, an LLC, or an actual person or family that owns multiple properties along Edwin Street, it is not if you have a property, you get a vote for each property. It is a vote for that property owner. So if someone has 5 properties, again, whether it's a business or a person, and they own 5 properties on Edwin Street, they will get 1 vote. Each property owner gets 1 vote, not 1 vote for each property. So that's sort of my clarification. And this has been very much past 5 months, a lot of focus on making sure we're clearly communicating that right. But that's the answer. Very long one, but that's the answer to your question.
No, I think that's great. Well done. I think that covers most of what I wanted to say. I think this is a great plan, and I appreciate the work you've done on it. So thanks for letting me ask a series of questions.
And if I could again, this is Brian again, I'd like to ask another follow-up to what Elizabeth just asked. So having heard what you said about each property owner with property that is adjacent to the street in question gets a vote. So I assume that means in a case like ours, where Edwin Greens has 32 houses, and I'm going to guess there are about 26 property owners or so, since we have some renters. And technically, none of us individually owns that front yard that abuts Edwin. We all collectively own it, the whole unit. It's common area. So I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm right or not, that basically every person that owns a house in our area counts as abutting or adjacent to Edwin, including the houses behind us.
So you brought up thank you for asking, because I forgot a 5th thing I had to unpack. And I'm not going to get this description right. So from a planning standpoint, I'm going to get this wrong, but we look at if there are large common area parcels touching Edwin, and then are there individual subparcels within that common area parcel. And I'm doing an awful job of describing the terminology, but how many homes did you say?
Well, a total of 32 houses, but some of them are owned by landlords. So I would say probably you're talking about 25, 26 actual homeowners.
Okay.
And we all own that common lawn together. We own, the homeowners association owns the lawn that abuts Edwin.
So 32 property owners, regardless of whether they're out of state or living there, 32 property owners, they're all within a kind of a common area parcel, and that common area parcel is what touches Edwin, right?
Correct.
So when that happens, the Edwin Street, the common area, does not get a vote. We basically take that common area and we throw it out. But each of the individual, again, I'm saying calling it subparcels, maybe not the best word uses, but each subparcel. So each of the 32 subparcels will get 1 vote, or each of the property owners will get 1 vote. So that's how we handle that one. So the common area won't get it, but by the fact that the common area touches, it brings the entirety of all the parcels within that bigger parcel in to be eligible to vote.
Okay. But again, for a landlord that might own 4 or 5, they still get 1 vote. Just like those of us that own 1.
That's right. And even if you owned 3 yourself, you would only get 1 vote. So just across the board. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, Brad, if I could, this is Sean Parker, if I could jump in for just a second. And I wanted to just note on the voting process, I believe that for every vote that's gone through within District 5, which there's been several this term, they've all passed. Each street has approved the stuff, the traffic calming measures, and we do sort of get. It is based on the respondents. So, you know, from like a, I guess, strategic thing, you just want to make sure that a bunch of people who are opposed to it don't, you know, get higher than 33% or whatever that is. And you know, a lot of folks see that card and just frankly, they're going to say, I don't know what that is. I don't care. I'm going to just toss that in the trash bin. That's just the way that kind of outreach works, for better or worse. But there will be respondents, and we want to make sure that we get as many folks who are in support to respond as possible. And we do get these sort of status reports. I'm not sure how long the voting window is open, but sometime during that window, I get, and the sponsors of the traffic calming request get an email that says, okay, well, this street is at 80% in support, this street is at 100% in support, and this street is down at 67%. And when we get that status report, if we see that, oh boy, we're sitting right at 67, we need to make sure we do some outreach and get some response. That's another opportunity to kind of say, okay, we need to make a little more of a push to make sure that folks get the chance to respond. So we will kind of have those updates and have that opportunity through the process to just to know if we need to make a little bit of an extra push during the voting process.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Councilmember Parker. And I hope I'm certainly not out of line here representing NDOT, but I want to make sure we also kind of make sure we say what NDOT's role is. The neighborhood applied for traffic calming, so the neighborhood initiated it. And then we go through our prioritization process. We saw Jones and Edwin, as Laura described, like, yeah, they ranked pretty high. Let's do something about it. Let's put it forth the design. And our job at NDOT is to prepare a design that we feel will be effective at managing vehicle speeds and do some traffic calming. But once we prepare that design that as engineers we feel good about, it kind of goes back to the neighborhood on the voting. So NDOT's role is we administrate the voting, but at no time are we ever campaigning either way. We give the vote updates to the council member, but we don't campaign or push either way. We just want to give the facts. So it truly is up to the neighborhood, whether they're for or against it, to sort of vote and rock the vote, for lack of a better phrase. But as engineers, we just want to make sure we give the neighborhood the ability to vote on what happens, but whatever it is, we feel good about as engineers. That's sort of the NDOT responsibility in this.
Yeah, 100%. So thanks for clarifying that. If there is a need for a little bit of a push and a little bit of campaigning, that'll be myself and Matt and Brian and Elizabeth and whoever else is engaged with the process. NDOT won't be going out and knocking doors and reminding people to vote and whatnot. They'll send their cards out, but they won't be advocating for or against or anything like that. So thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually do have one more quick question I just thought of. After these are installed, assuming we get what we hope will happen, et cetera, yada, yada. I mean, who's responsible for maintenance issues, and how long do we kind of have that deal, so to speak, with like maintenance to be expected and all of that?
Well, these are in this case traffic calming. These are based on the concept design, speed cushions. These are speed cushions that Metro Nashville taxpayer funds are paying for. They're being installed on publicly owned streets that Metro Nashville NDOT owns and maintains. So ownership and maintenance would be exclusively NDOT, because they're on a public street. That's one of the reasons why NDOT is involved, is they're a public street owned by NDOT. NDOT's going to maintain these. So, and it goes back to we're here to talk about with you traffic calming, but Laura mentioned Hub Nashville. If the vote is successful and you get speed cushions installed and 3 or 6 months down the road, one of them's getting torn up, it shouldn't happen. But if it does, that's why we like to make sure people know about Hub Nashville. You kind of add that to another thing of, if it doesn't look right, 311 or Hub Nashville is a great way to make sure that NDOT's maintaining what they've installed.
Oh yeah, no. I understood it was like, in the realm of government, but I guess what I'm saying is there a sense of like we're going to maintain these for 5 years, or they're expected to last for 5 years, but we maintain them for I mean, you know what I mean? Like, is there a sense of how the future is laid out at this when you start these projects?
Right. So if the vote is successful in the future and you get speed cushions installed, I don't believe there'd be a time frame for them. They'd be like anything else, like signs or pavement markings or traffic signals, where as long as they're useful life, it runs, they will be out there. And if they ever get damaged or worn down, they would get replaced with a newer version. It's not the speed cushions go in and as long as they last and once they're done, see ya. No, this is a street. This would become a street with speed cushions on it, period. And then
Cool.
if they need maintained or repaired, again, just like stop signs or other infrastructure is, when they get worn out, NDOT doesn't just remove them. We're in the business of safety, engineer. So we would replace them. I don't remember what the year is for the warranty. So I don't know if there's if the vendor that NDOT buys these from offers a 5-year warranty I have to go and look at that, but it's pretty long.
Okay, cool. Great. I think that's it from me. Thank you so much for everything you're doing for our community. It means a lot.
You're welcome. So I think and we can certainly answer more questions from anybody, but the next steps I think is we're going to go back and kind of take some more measurements, especially on Edwin Street with those hills, but also Jones in a few spots. We're going to work on that final design, which will be a little more zoomed in, a little more specific than what we're sharing here on this presentation right here. I would think that final design is going to be wrapped up sometime by the end of January. Maybe mid-January, but I think by the end of January. So I believe that we could expect to have our second meeting on these streets sometime in February. There would be we would coordinate with the council member and or the neighborhood leads on, whether it's virtual again or if it's in person, the date, the time, and all that. But I think you could expect a second meeting in February. There'd be similar mailers to what went out for this first meeting. Then after that second meeting, if everything goes well and we're all in agreement, we'd move right to that ballot, and there'd be a third round of mailers, the ballots that would go out. That's sort of the time frame for what the next steps would be.
I have 2 quick questions, and hopefully these are my last. The first is, will this PowerPoint slide deck be available online or somewhere that I could access it and maybe show it to someone that I'm talking to about this?
I am not sure if NDOT is posting these on the websites, but I believe NDOT is trying to provide these in advance to council members. I don't want to throw NDOT under the bus. Councilmember Parker, did you happen to get a copy of this before this meeting here?
I can search my email very quickly and find out.
Okay. If not, I am happy after this meeting is done. I will email you, council. I know Gil's been doing really well at doing that, and NDOT's been doing that. But if it helps to move it to the top, I can send it. We can certainly share it. I just can't remember the way we're doing that to answer your question.
That's fine.
Yeah, I've got it in my inbox. Brian, if you just tell me your email address, I'll go ahead and forward it to you.
Sure. Let me give you my private email rather than my work. It's my first name, last name as one word. So BRYAN, Brian, PIE, like pie, PER. So it looks like Piper. It's pronounced Peeper, and because Germans don't understand vowels. And anyway, so Brian Peeper at iCloud.com.
Hey, Brian, with the last name like Walshman, at least you have vowels.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought of one more thing real quick. Sean, I mean, I'm sorry I didn't ask, like, what do you think about this? In your experience, is this like on track with your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about that I'm pleased to see here is, for whatever reason, my email was undeliverable. Brian, I'll connect with you after the thing and get it to you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
I like that we have sort of 2 per block here, because I think, as Brad said, what you don't want to do is, have, I forget what the number is, but if you put a few hundred feet in between these things, people tend to gas it up between them, and they don't really do their job. So, seeing like 6 along Edwin, I mean, that kind of spacing is kind of, I think, what we have to be looking at to get any kind of impact.
Okay, cool.
I would be curious to know if there are any advantages to the speed tables over speed cushions. I understand that your preliminary recommendation would be speed cushions and the advantages of those as you discussed with the emergency vehicles, but in terms of either cost of installation, maintenance, effectiveness, yeah, I mean, make the best argument you can to me for why I would want tables instead of cushions, if
Right.
there is an argument.
I'm going to try my best to give you the pros and cons for both. So speed cushions, there's less, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to the photo. Again, I love visuals. So we're just going to go right back to the better visual aids for this. Let's see, share, PowerPoint. All right, let's go with speed tables first. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So speed tables, there's more material. That means more cost. That's a con. Emergency vehicles are going to be more impacted by this. That's a con. I will tell you my pro, because they're longer, the actual length that your car, I mean, the speed cushions are typically 7 feet in length. These speed tables are typically 14 feet in length. They have that kind of flat middle. I personally believe it's a little more comfortable to go a little faster over these speed tables. Now, I'm not talking about exceeding the speed limit. If this cushions are 15 to 20 mile per hour, comfort, and comfort is relative to each person, I think the tables are maybe 20 to 25 miles per hour comfort. So that flat area and then being a little longer, vehicles can go just a little faster over them. That's to me the biggest pro. But I compare that with the cons of the emergency vehicle impact, and there's just more material. Whereas when you go to the cushions, right out of the gate, you can see there's less material. NDOT's paying for less cost, which means there can be more locations because there's not more material at each one location. So I think the pros are that there are the gaps for the emergency vehicles. It does cost less for each location. The negative is oftentimes they are a little shorter, which means that we'd be looking at a little slower comfort speeds, and that's relative. Everyone's comfort is going to be different. We might be looking at 15 to 20 miles per hour. We feel initially like 15 to 20 along a street like Edwin Street at each of these spots is kind of appropriate, whereas on Jones Avenue, it's more of a connector between Trinity and Douglas. We may look at something a little longer, still do cushions, but maybe make them a little longer of cushions. But that is the biggest reason why we shy away from the tables and usually go more toward the cushions. So that is the best argument I can make, or best case I can make.
Thank you.
Cool. We're here as long as you all want to talk traffic calming or ask questions. Totally up to you all.
That's all I've got. And Sean, I'll follow up with you about the slide deck.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a great Saturday.
Excellent. Thank you all. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Bye.
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 Thank you.